Cutting and burning operations are hazardous jobs and potentially dangerous for the operator, as well as those working around oxy-fuel equipment. Before you make your first cut, you need to be familiar with the proper methods for safely setting up and using the oxy-fuel cutting and burning systems. Before using an oxy-fuel torch, make sure you have all the necessary equipment to perform the job correctly and safely. Your cutting torch setup, which includes a torch, hoses, regulators, and oxy-fuel tanks. You'll also need special wrenches for couplings. It's essential that you wear the proper ANSI-approved eyewear for protection from flying metal and for ultraviolet protection. Goggles with tempered lenses shaded number 4 or darker must be used to protect your eyes from injury and to provide good visibility while you work. You'll also need leather welding gloves or hand protection, a striker to light the torch, a soapstone and straight edge for marking, a soapy solution and a brush to check hoses and fittings for leaks, a tip cleaner, a bucket of water for controlling fire hazards, a fully charged fire extinguisher, a cutting jacket or leather apron, cuffless pants, and high-top work boots to protect you from sparks. The portable oxy-fuel workstation is the most common type found on a construction site. Oxygen and fuel cylinders are mounted on a portable cart so they can be easily moved from one location to another. Oxygen is ordinarily supplied in standard steel cylinders. The 244 cubic foot cylinder is most commonly used, but larger and smaller sizes are available. Oxygen cylinders are usually pressurized to more than 2,000 pounds per square inch. The amount of pressure in an oxygen cylinder is indicated by the regulator gauge. Always handle the cylinders with care. Acetylene is available in cylinders ranging in size from 10 to 850 cubic feet and can be filled to a pressure of approximately 250 pounds per square inch gauge or PSIG. Compressed gas cylinders contain highly pressurized gas so that the container can hold as much fuel as possible. However, the pressure of this gas is too high to work with. A regulator is necessary to reduce the gas pressure to the lower working pressure needed for cutting and welding operations. You'll need regulators on both oxygen and fuel gas cylinders. The inlet connection joins the regulator to the cylinder. Fuel gas inlet connections usually have left-handed threads and are marked with a V notch around the connecting nut. All oxygen connections have right-handed threads. The pressure adjusting screw controls the delivery process of the gas to the hose. Turning the pressure adjusting screw clockwise opens the pressure valve. This allows the gas to flow through the hose to the torch. Turning the pressure adjusting screw fully counterclockwise releases the pressure on the valve and the gas flow is cut off. The high pressure gauge shows cylinder or inlet pressure. The low pressure gauge shows the pressure being delivered from the regulator to the hose. The welding hose transports low pressure gas from the regulator to the cutting or welding torch. It's designed for 200 psig maximum pressure. An industrial welding hose is usually color-coded for gas identification. Most often, green is the oxygen hose. Red is the fuel hose. It's very important to clearly identify which hose is being supplied by which gas. Welding hoses are attached to the outlet connections. As with the inlet connections, the fuel gas outlets and hoses have left-handed threads with V notches for easy identification. Oxygen outlets have right-handed threads. The relief valve protects the low-pressure side of the regulator from high pressure. A torch handle is a set of gas tubes with control valves. One tube and valve control the fuel. The other tube and valve control the oxygen. The torch handle does not mix the gases for the oxy-fuel process. The mixing is done by the cutting or welding attachments. One of the main components of a torch handle is the control valve body, Y. The body Y is marked oxygen and fuel and contains two control valves. The fuel sides of the body and the control valve have left-handed threads to accept the fuel gas hose. The other side has right-handed threads for the oxygen hose. None of these valves require lubrication. The fuel gas supply is controlled by a valve on the torch handle. The internal reverse flow check valves prevent the fuel gas and oxygen from mixing inside the regulator hoses. These valves make it more difficult for an explosion or fire to occur if fuel gases and oxygen become mixed. The cutting attachment is connected to the torch handle to form the cutting torch. It provides a wide range of cutting capabilities. The cone end and coupling nut are main parts of the cutting attachment and are designed to permit easy attachment to the torch handle. The cone end is machined to fit the torch head and sealed with O-rings to keep the oxygen and fuel gas separated. Always check the O-rings for damage to prevent leaks. The oxygen valve on the torch handle must be fully open when using the cutting attachment. The cutting oxygen lever and tube allow the cutting oxygen to flow through the center part of the cutting attachment head. The upper oxygen tube is designed to allow a maximum supply of oxygen to the cutting operation and also provides structural strength for the cutting attachment. The cutting attachment head keeps the preheat gases and cutting oxygen separated during the cutting operation. The outside of the cutting attachment head is threaded for the cutting tip nut. The tapered seating surfaces on the cutting tip provide a metal-to-metal seal when secured by the tip nut. Clogged openings can be cleaned with small round files or tip cleaners. Before you begin cutting, be sure your work area has a fireproof floor. Concrete floors are recommended. Heat-resistant shields, like fire blankets, should be used to protect nearby walls or unprotected floors from sparks and molten metal. Adequate ventilation is required to prevent a buildup of oxygen, fuel gas, and toxic fumes. Workbenches or tables used during oxy-fuel cutting must have fireproof tops. Fire bricks or heavy steel grating are good cutting surfaces. Oxygen and fuel gas cylinders must be chained or secured to a wall, bench, or cylinder cart to hold them upright and protect them from falling. Keep the right type of fire extinguisher in the work area and be sure it's easily accessible. Keep the valves closed on empty cylinders. Store full and empty acetylene cylinders in a well-marked, specified storage area. Before you fire up your cutting torch, you need to conduct a thorough inspection of the oxyacetylene equipment. Inspect the cylinder valve and regulator threads for traces of oil or grease, and for any damage, connect the acetylene regulator, flashback valve, and hose fittings. Brass fittings should be hand tightened first, and then wrench tightened. Before opening the tank, release the adjusting screw on the oxygen regulator by turning it counterclockwise. Standing to the side of the tank, slowly open the cylinder valve. The cylinder gauge should read about 2200 to 2400 psi full. Adjust the oxygen regulator until the pressure on the outflow gauge matches the pressure needed for the tip you're using. Before opening the tank, release the adjusting screw on the acetylene regulator by turning it counterclockwise. Standing to the side of the tank, slowly open the valve. The cylinder gauge should read about 250 psi full. You'll also need to clear the hoses. Open the regulator valve 3 to 5 psi for 5 to 10 seconds to clear the hose of dust and debris, and then close the valve. Repeat this procedure with the oxygen hose. Connect the cutting attachment to the torch handle and carefully hand tighten the coupling nut. Wrench tightening will damage the O-rings. Attach the assembled torch to the hoses by hand, and then tighten with a wrench. The nut on the fuel hose is reverse thread. Adjust the regulator pressure. Never set the working acetylene pressure higher than 15 psi because it could explode. Do the soap and water test for leaks. Brush the soapy water on all fittings, watching for bubbles. Having completed a thorough pre-job inspection of the oxyacetylene equipment, you are now ready to light the cutting torch. Open the fuel valve on the torch handle approximately 1/8 turn and ignite the gas with a spark lighter. Hold the spark lighter alongside the torch tip. Do not hold it directly over the end of the tip. Never use a match or butane lighter to light the torch. Increase the fuel supply until the flame stops smoking. Slowly open the preheat oxygen valve on the cutting attachment until the preheat flames form a well-defined blue-white inner cone. This is called a neutral flame. Depress the cutting oxygen lever and use the preheat valve to readjust to a neutral flame a second time if necessary. To cut into a steel plate, preheat a small spot on the base metal to a bright cherry red color. If you depress the oxygen cutting lever before the metal turns a bright red color, the preheated area will cool off, and then it must be reheated before it can be cut. Hold the tip of the preheat flame about 1/8 inch from the metal where the cut is to begin. Depress the cutting oxygen lever. It's better to use both hands to guide and stabilize the cutting torch. When the metal has been penetrated, move the torch in the direction you wish to cut. As you begin your cut, slowly rotate the tip toward the direction of the cut. Advance as fast as cutting will allow. Moving too fast will lose the cut, and moving too slowly will cause the cut to fuse together. Don't touch metals that have just been cut. They are hot. To prevent coworkers from being burned on the hot metal, write "hot" on the surface of the metal with a soapstone. To shut down your cutting equipment, start by closing the preheat oxygen valve first, and then close the fuel valve on the torch handle. Next, close both cylinder valves. Open the preheat oxygen valve or the cutting oxygen lever to release the pressure in the system. Both gauges should go to 0. Close all oxygen valves. Turn the adjusting screw on the oxygen regulator counterclockwise until tension is released. Open the fuel valve on the torch handle to release the pressure. Turn the fuel regulator adjusting screw counterclockwise until tension is released. Now, put the gauges in the cart tray or storage area and coil the hoses around the cart handle, or put them in the storage area. Oxy-Fuel equipment demands your complete attention while you work. Keep the worksite safe for you and for those working around you.